The ranch had always been a refuge. 30 serene acres of pasture land, bordered by ancient oaks and a wooden split-rail fence that had stood since my husband's grandfather hammered it into the soil. For my wife, Emily, and our daughter Sophie, it wasn't just property, it was home. A place where the noise of the outside world couldn't reach them, at least. That's how it used to be. The sound of crunching gravel cut through the morning calm. Emily looked up from unloading groceries to see a gleaming white SUV rolling to a halt at the edge of the driveway. Dust clouded in its wake as the driver's door flung open. Out stepped a woman whose presence demanded attention for all the wrong reasons. She was clad in a beige business suit far too formal for a rural visit, oversized sunglasses shielding sharp, assessing eyes. She carried a clipboard as if it were a gavel. She walked with a purposeful, clipped gait, closing the distance like she was already in charge. "I'm Karen Strickland," she announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "President of the Willow Creek HOA. Emily wiped her hands on a dish towel and straightened. "Good morning. This isn't Willow Creek, this is Carter Ranch," Karen smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Oh, I'm well aware. And I'm here to inform you that as of last week's board vote, your property now falls under Willow Creek jurisdiction. You'll need to sign these documents to officially join the HOA and comply with community standards." Emily's brow furrowed. "We didn't receive any notice about this. That's because you're the last holdout. But don't worry," Karen said, flipping through her clipboard. "I'm here to walk you through the paperwork." Sophie, carrying a basket of fresh produce from their garden, hovered behind her mother. "Mom, what's she talking about?" Emily's grip on the dish towel tightened. "Nothing that concerns us, sweetheart." Karen's tone shifted, turning saccharine and slow, as if addressing a stubborn child. "Refusal to join will result in escalating fines. It's standard procedure. We just want to maintain property values," and her eyes swept over their weathered barn with a hint of disdain. "Ensure community aesthetics are upheld." Emily folded her arms. "Karen, with all due respect, this land has been in my husband's family for generations. We're not interested." Karen's smile thinned. "Defiance isn't wise. I'd hate for this to get legal." "Are you threatening us?" Emily asked, her voice low but steady. Karen's reply was a shrug, as if the outcome was inevitable. "It's protocol. I'll have law enforcement clarify your obligations." Before Emily could respond, Karen had already raised her phone and dialed. She took a few exaggerated steps away, but not so far that her words couldn't be heard. "Yes, 911. This is Karen Strickland, HOA, President of Willow Creek. I'm at a property where 2 individuals are aggressively refusing to comply with community regulations. I feel threatened and unsafe. Please send officers immediately." Sophie's face drained of color. "Mom, is she serious?" Emily's jaw tightened. She crouched down to meet Sophie's anxious gaze. "Listen to me. Go inside, lock the doors, and don't open them until I say." "Okay." Sophie nodded and hurried into the house, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Karen ended her call with a self-satisfied smirk. "This is for your own good, dear. You'll see that resistance is pointless." 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rumbled up the drive. 2 deputies stepped out, surveying the scene with casual indifference. The older of the 2, Deputy Donnelly, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen's demeanor transformed instantly. She waved dramatically. "Officers, over here. These are the women I told you about trespassing, refusing to comply with HOA standards. It's a volatile situation." Donnelly's eyes flicked to Emily, recognition softening his features. "Morning, Mrs. Carter. Problem. She's trespassing," Emily said calmly, "and attempting to force us into a private HOA with threats and lies." Karen's tone sharpened. "This is HOA jurisdiction now. You can't just ignore community governance." Donnelly sighed, adjusting his hat. "Karen, this property has never been under HOA oversight. You're overstepping." Karen's face flushed, but she pressed on, undeterred. "Then perhaps it's time we escalate this to county enforcement." Emily's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Go ahead, Karen, but you might want to consider who you're dealing with." Karen's laugh was brittle. "I don't care who your husband is. Rules are rules." Donnelly exchanged a glance with his partner, a flicker of amusement passing between them. Karen was playing a dangerous game, and she had no idea how high the stakes truly were. The ranch was quiet again, but beneath that calm, the storm had just begun. The next morning, Emily awoke to the sound of hammering knock on the house. On the front gate, she threw on a jacket, stepped onto the porch, and there she was, Karen Strickland, standing triumphant with 2 men in neon HOA vests, affixing a bright, orange notice to their private gate. "Violation notice," it read in bold, aggressive lettering. Emily's patience had thinned to a razor's edge. "Karen, you're trespassing again." Karen didn't flinch. "It's an official HOA violation. Unregistered property improvements and non-compliance with Willow Creek standards. You're accumulating daily fines." Emily stepped closer, noting the smug glint in Karen's eyes. "You have no legal standing here." Karen crossed her arms, clipboard in hand. "Oh, but I do. The HOA charter allows us to enforce compliance on annexed properties. The board voted unanimously." Your board's vote doesn't change property deeds, Emily said flatly. Karen leaned in, lowering her voice to a condescending whisper. Look, honey, I'm giving you a chance to get ahead of this. Pay the fees, sign the membership papers, and we'll make this easy. Keep resisting, and well, I can't be responsible for how aggressive enforcement gets. Emily's phone was already recording in her pocket by noon. HOA security, a couple of overgrown teenagers in matching polo shirts, were loitering near the driveway. Pretending to patrol, they carried walkie-talkies like badges of honor, making a spectacle of their presence as they took photos of the house and barn. Sophie, peering through the living room window, wrung her hands nervously. Mom, they're taking pictures of me. Emily's protective instincts flared. Stay inside, sweetheart. Let them get their evidence. It'll be useful soon enough. Every click of their camera was a spark feeding the growing fire inside. Emily documented everything Karen's notices, her harassing patrols, every smug grin she flashed like a weapon. All of it was sent in real time to her husband, Jack, who was currently 2 states away on a federal assignment. Jack's responses were calm, surgical. Document everything. Let them overplay their hand. I'll handle the rest when I'm back. But Karen wasn't done. By late afternoon, a county sheriff's vehicle arrived at different deputies, this time younger, less familiar with the Carters. This wasn't a welfare check. They were delivering a notice. An official-looking envelope, stamped with the Willow Creek HOA logo, addressed to the occupants of 117 Carter Ranch Lane. It demanded immediate payment of $3,500 in fines for ongoing violations, threatening liens and legal action. Emily read it once, twice, then calmly folded it back into its envelope. Officers, she said evenly, did you verify the legal jurisdiction of this notice? The deputies exchanged uncertain glances. One muttered, we were just asked to deliver, ma'am. Karen watched from the roadside, arms crossed, satisfied. Emily felt the weight of Sophie's gaze from the window. Her daughter was learning something vital, not about law, but about standing ground. You can tell Ms. Strickland, Emily said loud enough for Karen to hear, that my husband will address this when he returns. Until then, she is not to set foot past this gate again. Karen approached, her heels clicking like gunshots against gravel. Empty threats. Your husband can't save you from the HOA, dear. No one defies Willow Creek and walks away unscathed. Emily's smile was cold. You should really stop assuming you know who you're dealing with, Karen scoffed, turning on her heel. But her confidence was a little less stable than before. She hadn't expected this much resistance. In her world, a clipboard and a condescending smile were usually enough. But this wasn't her world. Not really. That evening, as dusk draped itself over the fields, Emily sat at the kitchen table reviewing the day's footage and documents. Sophie sat beside her, quiet but alert. Mom, Sophie said, breaking the silence, is Dad going to stop her? Emily paused, then looked her daughter square in the eye. Your father doesn't lose battles. And Karen just declared war. Outside, Karen's security patrol made another slow pass, their flashlights sweeping across the porch as if rehearsing a takeover. Emily didn't flinch. Her husband would be home soon, and when he arrived, the game would change. The following morning, the air was heavy with anticipation. Karen's orange violation notices still flapped mockingly on the gate, but Emily wasn't paying them any mind. Her husband was coming home at precisely 9 a.m. The low hum of a black SUV echoed up the gravel drive. It wasn't the HOA's smug white Lexus this time. It was Jack. He stepped out wearing a plain navy shirt and jeans, but there was a presence about him steady, unshaken. His gaze swept across the property, pausing briefly on the latest patrol car parked arrogantly across their drive. Emily met him at the porch, her relief tempered by months of built-up anger. You're just in time. Jack gave a thin smile, kissed her cheek, then glanced toward Sophie, who was watching from the doorway. Hey kiddo, you've been holding the fort. Sophie smiled back, but her eyes betrayed the stress. Mom's been amazing. Karen's a nightmare. Jack's expression darkened. He turned his focus toward the trespassers if summoned by the rising tension. Karen's white SUV appeared, tires crunching dramatically over the gravel. She parked deliberately close, stepping out with that same suffocating air of entitlement, clipboard in hand. Ah, the husband returns, Karen said, striding up with an exaggerated smile. I trust your wife has informed you of the situation. We have much to discuss. HOA compliance isn't optional. Jack tilted his head, studying her like a specimen. Karen Strickland, correct, president of Willow Creek, HOA. Karen straightened, mistaking his calm for intimidation. That's right, and I've been more than patient. Your family's non-compliance has reached legal thresholds. My lawyers, Jack's ID wallet snapped open with a flick of his hand. The shiny federal badge gleamed in the morning light. Jack Carter, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Enforcement Division, he said, his tone crisp and detached. I've reviewed the fraudulent claims you've filed. You've trespassed on federal protected private land, issued falsified legal notices, and made false emergency calls to law enforcement. That's not HOA protocol, that's federal crime. Karen's words faltered, her mouth opening and closing like a beached fish. Excuse me, this is a private community issue. Jack took a measured step forward. No, Karen, this is criminal harassment, fraud, and obstruction. Your made-up jurisdiction ends where my property line begins. And this ranch, he gestured wide, was never annexed. You don't have the authority to enforce anything here. Karen's voice pitched up, laced with panic. The board approved the expansion. The community needs uniformity. You can't just ignore governance. Jack smiled, but it was ice-cold, Karen. This isn't a suburban cul-de-sac. This is private land protected under state and federal law. Your board's vote holds as much weight here as a lemonade stand's by. The patrol car that had been loitering nearby suddenly reversed down the drive, their presence no longer amusing. Emily, arms folded, watched as Karen's carefully crafted world began to crumble. You filed false reports with emergency services, Jack continued. I have transcripts. You sent harassment squads onto private property. You tampered with legal documents. That's not community governance, that's felony-grade stupidity. Karen's clipboard was no longer a shield. It drooped in her hands, her confident stance replaced with visible tremors. I didn't mean any harm. It's standard HOA enforcement. Jack's eyes narrowed. Save it for the county judge. As if the universe had been waiting for that cue, a county sheriff's cruiser pulled into the drive. This time, it wasn't clueless rookies. Deputy Donnelly stepped out, hat in hand, a knowing grin tugging at his lips. Morning, Carter. Heard things escalated while you were away. Jack gestured toward Karen without breaking his gaze. Ms. Strickland here has been busy expanding her empire. False reports, trespassing, fraudulent notices. I'd like to file formal charges. Donnelly's eyes flicked to Karen, his expression amused yet firm. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to hand over that clipboard and come with me. Karen's bravado shattered. This is outrageous. You can't arrest me for doing my job. Donnelly sighed, taking the clipboard from her frozen fingers. It's not your job to rewrite property lines, ma'am. You've been warned before. As Donnelly gently escorted Karen to his cruiser, Jack turned back to Emily and Sophie. It's handled, he said simply. Emily exhaled, a weight visibly lifting off her shoulders. Sophie rushed into Jack's arms, her grip fierce. But as the dust from Karen's retreating SUV settled, Jack's gaze hardened. This isn't over yet. There's still the HOA board to deal with. They signed off on this nonsense. They'll need reminding where their power ends. Emily smiled knowingly. We'll remind them. All right. 3 days later, the Willow Creek HOA held an emergency board meeting, but it wasn't in their usual country club conference room. It was at the county courthouse. Jack had made sure of that. The courtroom was modest but packed. HOA board members lined the front row, their rehearsed smiles stiffening under the weight of subpoenas and official summons. Karen sat among them, visibly deflated, her once flawless appearance now a fragile facade. Jack stood at the front, calm and unflinching, flanked by the county prosecutor and a stack of documented evidence. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and little patience for nonsense, addressed the room. Ms. Strickland, you are facing charges of harassment, fraudulent claims, and unauthorized enforcement of non-existent HOA authority on private land. Your board is complicit in these illegal actions. Karen's lips trembled as she muttered, it was just ... policy enforcement. The judge's gavel struck sharply. Policy does not trump property law. Ms. Strickland, you have no jurisdiction over the Carter Ranch, period. Jack's presentation was surgical. He laid out Karen's trespassing footage, the falsified violation notices, and the recorded threats she'd issued to Emily and Sophie. Every smug line Karen had delivered now played in a courtroom that was anything but sympathetic. HOA board's defense crumbled fast. Their expansion vote was exposed as a desperate power grab with no legal standing. Even the board's own lawyer distanced himself, quietly sliding his chair a few inches away from Karen. By noon, the verdict was clear. The court ordered the Willow Creek HOA to issue a public apology, retract all fines and notices, and cease any further attempts to annex properties outside their original charter. Karen was slapped with personal fines, mandatory community service, and a restraining order barring her from coming within 500 feet of the Carter Ranch. But for Jack, it wasn't just about legal victories, it was about the message. The following weekend, Jack installed new signs at the ranch entrance. Heavy-duty steel plates bolted into the gate, reading private property, federal protection, trespassers will be PROSCCUT no pastel HOA notices, would ever touch their land again. Emily watched from the porch, a mug of coffee in hand, as Jack adjusted the last bolt. Sophie sat on the steps, sketchpad in her lap, adding doodles of cartoon goats trampling HOA Karen signs. Feels quieter, Sophie said, looking up. Emily smiled. That's the sound of people knowing better. But the final act came later that afternoon. Karen, stripped of her HOA title, drove past the ranch in her scuffed-up SUV, pretending not to look, but she couldn't resist a glance. What she saw was a scene that burned. The Carters, gathered under the shade of their old oak tree, hosting a neighborhood barbecue. Families from nearby farms laughed, kids played, and even Deputy Donnelly stopped by for a burger. Jack caught Karen's glance and raised a casual salute. Not a word was exchanged. None were needed. Karen pressed the gas, retreating into the very neighborhood she had once ruled. Now shunned by the community she tried to control. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the grill's embers faded, Emily sat beside Jack on the porch swing. "I can't believe how far she pushed," Emily said softly. Jack shrugged, his arm around her shoulder. "People like Karen don't understand boundaries until you draw the line in stone." Sophie emerged, holding up a new sketch. Karen tangled in caution tape, looking bewildered while the Carter Ranch stood tall in the background. "Think we should frame this?" Sophie grinned. Jack laughed. "That's going on the fridge." The quiet was real now. No patrol cars, no clipboard warriors, no HOA threats lurking. Just the land, the family, and the unspoken truth that some battles when fought right don't need to be repeated.